I used to believe that some friendships were unbreakable, like the kind you see in childhood movies or read about in old novels, messy but loyal, imperfect but eternal. But I now realize that sometimes, the people who know you best are the ones most capable of breaking you in ways no one else can. I met Ava in the second grade. We bonded over glitter pens, shared snacks, and our mutual hatred of math quizzes. It wasn't long before we became inseparable. The kind of girls who finished each other's sentences, coordinated Halloween costumes, and made ridiculous plans to open a bakery together in Paris. Through middle school and high school, we leaned on each other for everything: awkward crushes, family fights, periods of self-doubt, heartbreaks, panic attacks before exams, you name it. Our families became intertwined. Our moms texted, our dads grilled together on weekends, and we always celebrated birthdays as if we were born into the same bloodline. She was the maid of honor at my sister's wedding, and I was her emergency contact on every form. But somewhere in our early 20s, I started noticing small shifts, things too subtle to name at first. She would interrupt me mid-sentence to pivot the conversation back to herself. She'd forget to ask how a job interview went, even though I'd been panicking about it for weeks. When I got promoted, she replied with "must be nice" instead of congratulations. When I started dating someone who made me genuinely happy after years of toxic relationships, she acted distant, flat smiles, delayed replies, subtle jabs hidden in jokes. I excused it all. We were stressed, busy, growing. I told myself friendships change, and I held on tighter, trying harder to include her, reassure her, remind her she still mattered. But the more I gave, the more she withdrew, or worse, criticized. She started making comments that dug deep. "You've changed," or "don't forget where you came from," or "you're not as chill anymore." At first, I laughed them off, but they sat in my chest like weights. The final crack happened during a trip we planned for months. It was supposed to be a getaway to reconnect, just us, no boyfriends, no distractions. But from the moment we arrived, she was on her phone nonstop, texting a guy she had just started seeing, bailing on plans we made, choosing to stay in the hotel while I explored alone. On the second night, after a half-hearted dinner, she exploded. She accused me of abandoning her emotionally, of being too focused on my career, too obsessed with structure, of not being the friend I used to be. She cried, and I cried too, not because she was wrong, but because I realized I had spent so long walking on eggshells around someone who refused to meet me halfway. I thought about all the times I made excuses for her absence, her forgetfulness, her coldness. I thought about how many times I celebrated her wins, only to have mine treated like background noise. I thought about how my self-worth was tied up in her validation, and how, somewhere along the line, I started believing I needed her more than she needed me. That night, I didn't argue. I just listened. And for the first time, I didn't try to fix it. The trip ended awkwardly. We hugged at the airport, but it felt hollow. In the weeks that followed, we barely texted. When I reached out to check in, she replied curtly. Eventually, the silence became mutual. Losing her felt like losing a limb, painful, disorienting, and deeply personal. For months, I questioned everything. Was I too sensitive? Too ambitious? Did I outgrow her or abandon her? Therapy helped me unravel it. My therapist said something that stuck with me. Sometimes, friendships expire when one person keeps growing and the other refuses to. I had been clinging to a version of our friendship that hadn't existed in years, holding on to memories while ignoring the present. And maybe she had been doing the same, resenting who I became, because it reminded her of who she wasn't ready to be. I spent a lot of time grieving, not just her, but the version of me that thought I needed her approval to feel whole. Slowly, I started nurturing new friendships, ones built on mutual encouragement, emotional safety, and joy that didn't come with strings attached. I learned to celebrate myself out loud, even if no one clapped. I stopped filtering my wins to seem less intimidating. I took solo trips, picked up hobbies I used to shelve for our shared plans, and even let myself sit in silence without reaching for my phone. It's been 2 years since we last spoke. Sometimes I still think about her, like when I hear an old song we used to belt in the car, or when I see a dress she would have loved. But I don't feel anger anymore, just a kind of quiet, complicated gratitude. She taught me how deep friendship can feel, and how deep wounds can go. She also taught me that not everyone is meant to stay forever. And that's okay. The love we shared was real, but so was the damage. I've accepted both, And in that acceptance, I've made peace with the version of me that once believed loyalty meant self-abandonment. Now, I know better. And I'm better for it.